We are constantly telling ourselves stories, and the stories that we tell ourselves make a big difference in how we view things like personal growth, leadership development, change, or even community building. Because our stories, the stories we tell ourselves, are what we believe. And in this video, I want to share a bit more about my story, how it's developed and grown as I've developed and grown, and what this actually can tell us when it comes to change management, leadership development, or community building. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Danielle. My mission is to help people deepen their connections to self, to others, and to the environment, because it really is through connection that change becomes possible. And if you're here and if you're still with me, then you know as much as anyone that change is needed in this world. And every single one of us has a role to play in helping that change move through, whether we're doing it consciously or unconsciously. And the stories we tell ourselves, they play a big part in that. For a long time, I told myself stories like I needed to gain value by doing things for other people, or I told myself that my worth was attached to how well I did in school or my job performance. I taught myself these stories that if I wasn't doing things a certain way, then I either didn't have authority or integrity, or people wouldn't listen to me. And these stories really created a lot of fear and a lot of resistance in my life. If you have engaged with my content before, you've probably noticed a change in how I talk, especially if you were here since the start. And that's because the stories I've been telling myself have been constantly evolving and changing as I've let myself constantly evolve and change, as I've let myself bring awareness to the limiting beliefs that were keeping me in old patterns, and as I've let myself explore the values and beliefs that I actually want to live my life by. Every single one of these has become a new layer that is constantly helping me shape and grow my story to continue to become the person that I know I'm actually meant to become. Because I believe that if we take the time to listen and to find our authenticity, that every single one of us has a person that we're meant to become. We just have to deal with all the bullshit, pardon my language if you don't like swearing, we have to deal with all the bullshit that gets piled on us from when we're just little kids. Because the world is very, very happy to tell us how we should behave, tell us what success looks like, tell us what values we should live by, and tell us who we should be. The world is very eager to tell us that, but it doesn't know who we are. We have to know who we are, and then we have to show the world that who we are already is worthy. It is always worthwhile to become your most authentic self. It is always worthwhile to uncover your core values and start making choices based on those, rather than what other people are telling you to care about. And when I think about my story, and before actually I dive into that, let's talk about storytelling as a structure, because it is a structure. Storytelling is how humans create meaning. It's how we interweave themes and lessons and emotion into something that leaves us feeling a certain way. And those stories can keep us stuck. They can keep us fearful. They can keep us angry. They can keep us depressed or anxious or apathetic, or they can help us be inspired. They can help us connect with other people who believe in things the same way we do. Stories can help us imagine a future that is worth fighting for, a future that is hopeful. The stories we tell are so powerful. And in the change management space, with the work that I do with communities and with people, bringing awareness to the kinds of stories that we're living by versus the kinds of stories we want to be living by is a big part of helping people and communities and leaders change to become the best version of themselves, the highest version of themselves. For myself, going into my story, I really struggled with interweaving what felt like disconnected parts of myself. I am a very spiritual person. But that part of me that sees life and energy in every single thing around me, did not feel like it had a place with the part of me that was very academic and analytical and, values the scientific method and research and strategic planning, for example. Those felt like very, very distant parts of themselves. I had these stories telling me that I could not both be spiritual and strategic. I had these stories telling me that I could not see the interconnectedness of the all of everything and yet rely on research to help people do things. I also had stories that really disconnected me from what nourishing myself looked like. I thought I had to keep my hobbies and my joy and my play and my softness separate from my professional life. And for me, at the same time, I had a very strong belief that my professional life, my career, my life purpose is why I'm here. I am not the kind of person who can do a job that does not light me up on a soul level. So, as we can see, I was living with stories that were all contradictory. They were fighting for each other or fighting against each other. And I, myself, for a long time was very fractured because of this. I was doing well in things like post-secondary, where I got my degree in anthropology and my minor in psychology, and then I went on into public health, and I was doing well, I was learning well, and yet there was this whole other part of myself that I didn't feel like I had the right to explore. And when I did start to explore it, I thought I had to keep it in my bedroom at night. It wasn't something I could do in front of a camera. It wasn't something I could bring forward as a professional, as a skill set that helps me do the work that I do every single day. These old stories kept me from showing up in my most authentic energy. And if you're watching this video, I really want to invite you to pay attention to not even just the stories that you're noticing are holding you back right now. You might have some coming up that you're like, oh wow, I'm doing that too. I didn't realize maybe that there was another way of doing things. I didn't realize I could integrate them. Or maybe I recognize that disconnect, but I don't feel safe where I am to bring that together yet. And that's okay. The other invitation is to look back. If you're someone who has been on a personal growth journey or even a leadership development journey, if you've been in the middle of community building, how have the stories you used to tell yourself changed because you've been on this journey? What can be connected now that used to not be connected? What fears were you holding yourself back with that as you moved into action and collaboration and connection aren't there anymore? And if you feel called, if this is resonating with you, I would love to hear some of those examples in the comments, so please leave them below. For myself, and to be fair, this is an ongoing process. I am not anywhere near the end, even as I help others, even as I deepen into community building and connection in every area of my life. But as I've begun to recognize that, on one hand, my authentic self, my core self, who I really am, if there was no social expectations of how I needed to be or act, recognizing that that authentic version of me is worthy. Straight up, there's no factors, there's no conditions on my worth as a human being and as my authentic self. Yeah, sure, there are going to be places where my authentic self does not belong. There are going to be communities and institutions that look at what I'm doing with vibrant systems and how I'm showing up and how I'm integrating my spirituality into how I do my work, which is not to say I'm forcing it on other people either. My spirituality is basically just connection. Although I have a whole article on that you can read below if you want to get into what that actually means and looks like for me. But there are going to be places where that's unwelcome because they've already siloed spirituality from whatever they're doing. And I'm okay with that because I'm at a point now, I'm telling myself stories now, I'm believing stories now that I am not meant to be in those places. That if I cannot work in integrity in those places, then my medicine, my service is better conducted elsewhere. And by integrity, this too was truly a fundamental shift in my perspective. Integrity means wholeness. When we're talking about the integrity of, say, a container or a bucket, it is the ability to hold everything without leaking. No cracks, no leaks, no places of weakness in the body of this container. And our bodies are also a container, and for me to show up in integrity means I have to show up with this softer, interconnected, holistic spiritual perspective, and that is not actually at all separate from the strategic, the scientific, the evidence-based, evaluative side of me. That my analytical mind and my interconnected, holistic mind are actually the same thing. As I've started to tell myself this new story and as I've started to embody it, and this is why I call people first change management people first, because I really want to focus on the human aspects of change, but it's also embodied change management, because as humans, as people, we need to start embodying those changes. We need to start becoming the people who make those changes possible. And it did take me a long time to learn that. I'm not saying it's something that can change in our minds, perhaps, even in this video. Even as I say that, you're like, yeah, sure, I've heard that before. But to actually act in that way, to hold ourselves accountable in that way, is a very different dynamic. And it starts with what we allow ourselves to believe. It starts with what stories we allow ourselves to tell and to cycle through our communities or our teams or even just our own belief system. I do want to say that even if you're not actively choosing the stories you're living your life by, there are people and forces and systems that are feeding you stories already. There are active processes of propaganda in the world that we live in. And aside from that, we have just the news, for example. We're fed narratives day in and day out. We're fed narratives on social media with certain trends. And right now, especially on things like social media, those trends are shaped by our own algorithms, our own expectations, and artificial intelligence. A lot of what we're seeing, whether it's AI or bots, people paid to act certain ways, is already just a story. It's fake. It's created to spread these narratives, usually to keep you passive. When I invite you to start engaging with the stories that you're telling yourself, start exploring what they are, and start deciding if they're true to you, it is a call to action. Really, truly. It's not an invitation. It is calling you in to choosing to be an embodied and active creator of not only your life, but the world that we share. Because the world that we share is co-created with every single one of us, and so many people are doing that from a place of apathy or passiveness, or simply just going through the motions as though they aren't even actively living their lives. And I believe that if you're watching this video with me right now, you don't want to be that person. You would not be sitting with me at this point of this video if you were content living a life that others were feeding you. I have to say, too, to honor my own story, how it's grown and evolved really over 3 years, but also my entire life. Choosing to become the person who writes your own story, who shapes your own perspective of the world and what you choose to believe, what you choose to believe is possible. It's simultaneously the most freeing thing you will ever do, and also the most terrifying thing you will ever do. Because if we truly hold the belief that our perception of the world can make a real impact, we then have to accept the radical responsibility for how we perceive everything. And it's something that I probably, deepened into and then fell back from, and then deepened further and then fell back from so many times in the cycles of change and transformation that I've gone through. But it's by allowing ourselves to deepen in and then pull back, and then deepen in further and then pull back, that the change actually happens. One of the false stories that we tend to hold about change is that if we fall off the wagon, the change won't happen. We've failed. It has to be all or nothing. We have to get it right the first time. We have to win. And that's just not true. Because we're constantly in states of becoming. We're constantly in states of transformation. Our constant emergence of identity is what allows us to be such powerful creators in this world. It is what allows us to continue to choose hope and imagination and the belief that it is worth fighting for the causes we believe in. It is worth fighting for connectivity and love. It is worth building a world that is sustainable and alive and thriving. It is worth pursuing pathways that integrate what the research is telling us and what ancient systems of knowing have always been telling us, that we're all connected and that the wellness of one person helps support the wellness of another. That if any one of us is not free, then none of us are actually free. And therefore, we have a radical call to free everyone. to liberate everyone. And as I wrap up this video, I want to invite you. Maybe you haven't been able to identify any stories that are holding you back yet, and that's okay. You don't have to. Like I said, change takes time, change takes softness, change takes willingness. And if you are willing, if you are here with me today, wherever you are at your own journey, I want to invite you to go looking, to search out stories that are different from the narrative you're getting on your feed, on your news channels, or just even in your own mind, especially if you're a white person. Especially if your whiteness has not been challenged or broadened. This can be as simple as going to your local library and checking out a book written by an author who is Black, Indigenous, or a person of color, written by someone who maybe lives with a disability, written by someone who has a different sexuality or even just gender than you. If you have not done the work to expand your awareness of how other people see the world, this is your starting point. And this is why stories are so powerful, especially fiction. We often neglect the power of fiction, but fiction is not only helping us deepen into empathy for other perspectives, but it is actively working our imagination so we are capable of imagining a future that's worth fighting for. Vibrant Systems is not here to replicate existing systems. I am not here to continue furthering the systems of cis hetero patriarchy or colonialism or capitalism. For me, no, that is not my place. That is not where my medicine is needed. I am here to help us, myself, you, the communities we work in, the leaders of tomorrow. I am here to help us choose new stories. And in those new stories, I am here to help us make them rooted and sustainable and something that's alive, something that is responsive to the challenges we're going to face, because we are going to face challenges on this journey. If you want to be a part of building that brighter, hopeful, thriving future, then I invite you to subscribe to my channel for weekly updates on, I talk about all sorts of things. I talk about leadership development. I talk about how change moves, how we all have a role to play in change. I talk about personal growth, and I also offer grounding, guided meditations for people who need that nervous system regulation support to help the changes land, to help the understanding land, to help move into a curiosity, learning mindset. Because that is part of change too. If we're too rigid in how we interact with the world, we can't change. And we can only soften if we feel safe enough to soften. So I invite you, please subscribe, like this video if you enjoyed it, and leave me a comment. Let me know, what changes are you wanting to make? What changes have you made? What future are you working towards building? I love you. Honestly, bottom of my heart, I love you if you're here with me today. Thank you for joining me in this video. Let's make your story a vibrant one.